Voter registration.
Voters with disabilities represent roughly 1/6 of the American electorate. This includes persons with mobility, visual, communicative, physical, or cognitive impairments. Voters with disabilities face unique obstacles in registering to vote. For example, completing a paper form may be difficult for those with mobility challenges. Registering online may be impossible for blind voters if the forms are not made accessible for assistive technology such as screen readers. Forms with small print or complicated instructions may also become barriers to registration for some voters. Election officials can meet accessibility challenges with practical and cost-effective adjustments. However, to do so, they must take a broad view of accessibility needs within their electorate. They must understand that disabilities may be visible or invisible and may involve vision, hearing, mobility, cognitive function, and more. This video will highlight the primary barriers to accessibility in the voter registration process. It will describe best practices to help ensure voters with disabilities have equal access to this crucial first step of the voting experience. Election officials can use simple checklists and best practice guidance to remove barriers to voter registration and ensure that all eligible citizens can exercise their right to vote. The recommendations contained in this video are intended for election officials who are responsible for ensuring accessibility in elections. Following these best practices can help remove barriers for people with disabilities in the voter registration process. After reviewing applicable federal, state, and local laws, election officials may want to adopt the practices described in this guide that best fit the needs of their voters.
Closing the registration gap.
There is a gap in the participation rates of voters with and without disabilities. This disparity begins with the voter registration rate. A recent EAC study with Rutgers University showed a 3% difference in the registration rates of disabled and non-disabled voters. Inaccessible registration processes worsen this problem. Even the smallest detail, such as an inaccessible web form, can prevent a voter from participating.
Include people with disabilities in the process.
To help close the registration gap, election officials and community accessibility organizations can work together to resolve issues that prevent voter participation, keeping in mind that fully accessible elections begin with accessible voter registration. To ensure that access is considered, people with disabilities should be included throughout the process, from decision-making and development to testing and implementation. Organizing a testing group that represents a diverse set of needs is essential to ensuring an effective process. A cross-disability focus group can offer suggestions and inform decisions. In addition, the available voter registration options should be communicated in an accessible manner through different platforms.
Roles and responsibilities.
One of the most important factors to consider is how and where people with disabilities register to vote. According to findings from a recent EAC Rutgers study, these individuals are more likely to register in person at town halls, registration offices, public assistance agencies, polling places, and registration drives. Therefore, accessibility must begin with the physical location. Not all volunteers and election workers have the training and experience to be aware of the importance of accessibility in the voter registration process. To assist staff, please review our Information for Election Officials videos, Understanding Disability, and Interacting with People with Disabilities. The in-person voter registration process should be as clear and concise as possible. The goal should be to register voters quickly and accurately. Therefore, it is vital that all election workers understand their responsibilities when it comes to accessibility. Election officials, responsible for setting an overall strategy to meet the accessibility requirements set forth in HAVA, ADA, NVRA, and other laws. Poll workers, assisting voters, To adequately help voters with disabilities, poll workers must be carefully trained in methods of assistance and technology. Election website managers develop and oversee the accessibility and usability of an election office's website, ensuring that the site incorporates accessibility standards and functions with assistive technology.
Questions to ask.
Is the agency responsible for voter registration communicating effectively with people who have different access needs while maintaining the voter's privacy and independence? Are election workers trained in appropriate etiquette for assisting people with disabilities, including those with physical, cognitive, and mobility challenges? Are poll workers trained in ways to assist people with disabilities with registering to vote? If your state offers same-day voter registration, is that process accessible?
Accessible communications.
It helps all voters if instructions for registering to vote are in plain language. This means they are communicated in the simplest, most direct, and effective way, avoiding jargon. Here is a checklist for accessible voter communications. Ensure the physical registration location is accessible to people with disabilities. Communicate accessible options for registration to voters. Make all instructions clear and in plain language. Make American Sign Language, or ASL, interpreters available. Make alternate formats available, such as large print or Braille forms. Consult individuals with disabilities as to their preferred communication methods.
Questions to ask.
How do you inform community accessibility organizations about available voter registration options? What are the voter registration deadlines and how are they communicated? Can young voters pre-register? How do you reach individuals in this group who have disabilities?
Accessible forms.
For in-person voters, alternative forms, such as large print, should be available. Signature requirements must be accessible for all voters. Possible accessibility strategies for signatures include physical marks indicating a signature line, electronic signatures, stamps, and affidavits of assistance. In-person registration may occur in local election offices. State officials should consider providing their local election officials with sample registration forms in Braille. The registration form should allow voters to sign in a method that is accessible to them while adhering to state law. Similarly, designated NVRA state agencies that provide in-person registration opportunities should ensure the accessibility of voter registration forms. Here's a checklist for accessible forms. Include only essential questions on forms. Have ASL interpreters available for assistance. Make all instructions clear and in plain language. Make sure signature requirements are accessible. Have alternate versions of forms ready, including large print and Braille. Use plain language on all forms.
Questions to ask.
Have paper-based registration forms and informational documents been field tested to ensure accessibility, usability, and plain language presentation? Have accessibility strategies been put into place for physical signatures?
Online voter registration.
Online forms are often a solution to the inaccessibility of paper forms. It is important to keep in mind, however, that access to the internet and the devices capable of completing online forms are a significant barrier. Voters with disabilities may not have internet access, a smartphone, or a computer. Even when available, online forms are sometimes not accessible. Some websites are not accessible for screen readers or keyboards. Other websites might be written with complex language or include graphics without image descriptions. All websites and portals should be reviewed for accessibility and compatibility with screen readers. Additionally, if the process is not fully electronic, such as requiring a voter to print a completed registration form to sign prior to submission, the use of paper can be a barrier. people with disabilities may have difficulty with paper documents and envelopes. Here's a checklist for online voter registration. Ensure the website containing registration materials is accessible to screen readers and other assistive technologies. Ensure that the electronic forms are accessible, including PDFs. Have accessible signature processes in place for both electronic and paper forms.
Questions to ask.
Does your state offer online voter registration? Is that process, including all fillable forms and security features, accessible? Are all steps of the process, including opt-in or opt-out, accessible within that system?
Voter registration at a designated government agency.
State agencies covered by the NVRA collect voter registration data in several ways, including paper and various electronic or automated methods. When agencies collect registration data electronically and then transfer the information to election officials, the accessibility concerns depend on how the registrant transmits their information. If the applicant is responsible for completing the registration form independently and electronically on-site, the device deployed should be accessible and compatible with assistive technology. If the applicant is required to give their information to an interviewer, the interviewer should be able to communicate with the applicant in an accessible manner, including, for example, making an American Sign Language interpreter available. Here's a checklist for in-person registration at a designated government agency. Ensure all electronic devices are compatible with assistive technology like screen readers. Make sure interviewers communicate in an accessible manner. Make ASL interpreters available. We hope this video will empower you to help make voting more accessible. For more information, please visit eac.gov.